Actually, we are two-person. I'm with Andreas, just so you know. So here we are. A wonderful good morning Saturday from us. That's Andreas and me. We are from the University of Vienna, and we are very glad to be here with you today. Our title was announced, but without games, it would have been somehow even grayer. And our talk is about computer games, adolescence, and the question of opportunities for magic in the Corona crisis. So we will start with this. COVID-19 is hitting children and adolescents particularly hard. As Etienne points out, the virus indirectly and directly has consequences and is hindering the growth and development and jeopardizing the chances at a bright future. Due to developmental reasons, children and adolescents are particularly affected due to the COVID-19 burdens. So like social distancing, distance learning and lockdowns, schools are closed, meeting friends is forbidden, and at times, especially in the first period of the COVID crisis, teenagers would rarely left their 4 rooms. But was the pandemic only burdensome for all the teenagers, or was there also room for some magic? Interestingly, the amount of time young people spend playing video games has increased in the pandemic. Also, when you read columns and blogs online, questions and experiencing games in the crisis were discussed. Like for some, gaming was a lifeline to normalcy, while others used the medium as an escape when the world got too real. Whatever the case, gaming was a rock for many in 2020. It kept many of us sane in a rough year. So we ask ourselves, to what extent can digital games counteract the challenges experienced in the COVID-19 period? And how do adolescents experience computer gaming during this time? Magical or harrowing? To answer these questions, we conducted a research project. So Andreas and I initiated the project Zocke at the University of Vienna. And the insights gained from it will be presented now. The project was started in spring 2021, and we took interviews between June and August. As part of the project, we asked adolescents, how do you experience the COVID-19 time, and how do you play in this time?
Yeah, hello, wonderful. Good morning from me too. Let's now turn to the study situation. In doing so, we have divided the current state of research into 2 areas. On the one hand, stresses and challenges during COVID-19, and on the other hand, with regard to changes in gaming behavior. With regard to the experience, stresses and challenges, we should first mention the COPSI study from the University Medical Center Hamburg-Eppendorf, which has been conducted since mid-2020. That is towards the end of the first COVID-19 wave. Using online questionnaires, parents as well as children and adolescents were able to provide information about their experiences of stress. In the process, about 70% of the adolescents surveyed indicated that they felt stressed by the pandemic and accompanying changes. Homeschooling and lack of contact with friends were named as the main stress factors. In addition, the young people report more frequent conflict situations within the family systems, headaches, problems falling asleep, and generally a reduced quality of life. Similar results were also found in other studies summarized and described by Valpa et al. From 21. Worsening of family climate from the first lockdown in April 20, increased adolescent worry and anxiety about schooling, loneliness, and future prospects, and an experienced lack of social contacts are sometimes cited here. On the changed gaming behavior during COVID-19, here, for example, the YouGov survey from 2020 by the Game Association of the German games industry should be mentioned. This survey came to the following results. The length of play as well as the type of games chosen have changed since the start of the pandemic. 35% said they played more. 28% said computer games were helpful to get through the pandemic better. And 27% played more often with family and friends. An online survey by Barnes, Copeland Stewart from 21 found a similar trend. 71.3% reported a change in the length of time played, and 63.1% noted a change in preferred genres. In addition, positive effects of gaming on the general well-being, mental health, and social contacts were noted here. Of course, gaming times were not stable over the entire period of the pandemic until today. According to Irpan et al. From 2020, the peak period in terms of time involvement in gaming was around the mid-2020s with a 41 year increase. Since then, a trend towards normalization of gaming times has been observed.
So then back to our project. We conducted 15 interviews, 9 via Discord or Zoom online, and they last for approximately 1 hour. Our interview started with an initial question. Can you please tell me your life story in connection with computer games? And the opening narrative was not interrupted by us. The question was chosen particularly to give the adolescents the choice to tell their meaning of their experiences of the COVID-19 time. We combined then narrative and semi-structured elements because we also had specific research questions in mind, like how they experienced the COVID-19 time regarding through their playing. This was also discussed by Scheibelhofer 2008. And topics that we concluded in the last paragraph of the interviews were computer game biography, the social embedding, like circle of friends, family, and social contacts, the experience of the Corona time, and of course, playing in the Corona time. And we then made an analysis of the interviews based on Meyring's concept of qualitative content analysis, like the structuring of content and typification. And the results of this research project will be now showed by us.
We divided our research findings into 3 subcategories, namely experiencing the pandemic and changes in gaming behavior in the pandemic, what I'm going to talk about now, and meaning of computer gaming in the pandemic, what I'm going to talk about later on when it comes to immersion. On experiencing the pandemic, the analysis has shown a very even distribution in terms of experiencing. The evaluation of the interviews has shown a very even distribution, like I said. 5 participants said that their experiences of the time was predominantly positive. The following was highlighted as particularly positive: fewer school obligations or more time for hobbies, for example. There are different explanations for this. In some cases, the Corona time was connected with graduation from school and an associated sense of optimism. One interviewee, for example, lives in a remote area and started partying in private at this time. 4 participants experienced the pandemic neutrally to ambivalently, from completely okay to almost depressive phases, although in most cases the corresponding resources and competencies such as adaptability are available to a sufficient extent. However, this doesn't apply to all young people. 6 participants rated the time of the pandemic from the beginning to the time of the interviews as very demanding or stressful. Here is an example of a quote. Because you just don't pay attention. Nobody is interested somehow. You just game a lot with friends during the time and also in general. You stay up terribly late, sleep rhythm, everything is completely gone. Somehow everyone is so depressed and no one actually enjoyed gaming. Then you somehow notice, yes, it's not getting better. It's not getting better. And you become more and more sad and depressed. On the next point, changes in gaming behavior during the pandemic, we came to the following conclusions. All but one interviewee played significantly more than before, at least during the initial period of the pandemic. For 6 interviews, gaming time has increased and was still increasing at the time of the interview. For another 6 interviews, the gaming time initially increased, but at the time of the interview, it had returned to the time before the pandemic. For 2 respondents, gaming time has initially increased, but at the time of the interview, it was less than it was before the pandemic. And for 1 respondent, gaming time has decreased due to not having access to computer games. This respondent was living in a social pedagogical housing community at the time, and this PlayStation was at the parents' home. Yeah, that's it.
So with this meme in mind, we return to our initial question. How do adolescents experiencing gaming in the pandemic? Are there opportunities in the Corona time? And can games and immersion help relieve the challenges that adolescents are experiencing? We would like to present our findings using anchor references to illustrate the experiences of the player.
Finally, a first insight into the topic immersion. We differentiate different kinds of immersion according to tone from 2007, spatial immersion, ludic immersion, narrative immersion, and social immersion. Wernbacher from 2008 says that immersion as a construct describes a temporary mixing of the real and virtual worlds, whereby the virtual environment is perceived as more real than the analog environment. This leads to effective emotional and cognitive reactions of varying degrees in gamers. The quality depends on the game itself, auditory, visually, credibility of what is presented, for example, as well as on the readiness and constitution of the players, like ability to concentrate or motor skills. According to Mittelberg from 2020, switching back and forth between immersion and reflection is necessary in order to not to perceive experienced feelings as overwhelming, and that the devotion required for immersion in game worlds doesn't become self-destruction. It is, so to speak, the task of the game to also support the interruption of immersion in order to enable reflection and finally to promote deep learning, also in terms of personality development. With regard to our research, the question arises to what extent the verbal exchange during the game favors or hinders this interplay. So the first magic moment we could identify is a kind of social immersion. Almost all of our participants told us about the importance of friendship and the need to build or deepen relationships, especially during the COVID time, when they couldn't meet anyone outside like in schools. A short quote on this. So without the video games, the pandemic would have been a lot more boring above all, and yes, also a bit sadder. All but one interviewee played significantly more than before, like I said, at least during the initial period of the pandemic. And for 12 of the 15 respondents, the majority of social contacts shifted to the online space. Some also made intensive use of Discord as a social meeting place. Gaming was also used by a large proportion of respondents to compensate for a lack of social contacts in analog life. Again, a short quote on this. If I just have free time, when I like to have at least 2 hours a day where I can talk to someone, whether online or in real life, we have all realized that online can be a good substitute. The quality of this alternative, that is online gaming versus contacts in analog life, was perceived very differently from it's a full-fledged substitute to it's fun, hardly a substitute for real meetings. Everything was there. Negative experiences of gaming were also mentioned by some respondents, such as social exclusion in the game due to lack of English skills or exclusion from conversations held in class because parents don't allow a game discussed. Loss of motivation to play the game was also mentioned because excessive use has resulted in a certain oversaturation, that is too much playing over a certain period of time. In summary, it can be said that gaming very diverse range of meanings in the perception of the gamers surveyed. Especially the social aspect was mainly highlighted by the interviewees. Regarding our analysis of the interviews, we can emphasize that the experience of social presence of the fellow players led to higher levels of immersion. And so relationships and interactions could be compensated in a way in digital worlds. A quote on this as well. Because it was like meeting each other a little bit. Yes, and it just helped a lot during Corona period. So yes, this last quote nicely shows that while gaming can also have a strong social factor, which led to the described changes in terms of gaming behavior, they happened also due to a need or a want, respectively, which is contact with other people, attachment, connectivity, and sharing. And even if it was a great substitute for the initial phase of the pandemic, gaming can't replace real-life meetings equivalently and entirely over a long period of time.
Another magical aspect was escapism and the possibility of regulating emotions. For most of the participants, computer gaming has been a de-stressing, relieving, and reality escaping activity, especially during the first phase of the pandemic, as following references show. But without games, it would have been somehow even grayer, because It somehow pulls you out a little bit. You forget it once. You concentrate just for once. And it's somehow also a nice distraction, you can say, because it doesn't hurt anyone. Yes. And just playing with other people has taken a little bit of stress out of it, because I've said, okay, at least that part of what I do in my free time hasn't changed very much. And the Corona time I actually liked it a lot. I just played games, and it was not only a hobby, it was also something special. And finally, without games through the Corona period, then I would have freaked out. So computer games offer players the opportunity to escape from the reality shaped by COVID-19 and to immerse in digital games, untouched by Corona. The impression that everything is better in computer games can be evoked by experiencing power, control, sociability, and flow. Another magical aspect is considering the rich experiences of our interviewees, their engagement and involvement in and through can also be explained by spatial, effective, emotional, and ludic immersion. So some of the adolescents interviewed have used virtual game worlds, kind of magically, especially Minecraft, for self-determined, creative, and imaginative design of virtual worlds according to their imaginations, needs, and ideas. Well, how old was I then? I think 12, 14. So at an age when I could somehow not really do or change much particularly. Because who listens to an 11 to 12-year-old? And somehow in Minecraft, I was able to live that out. I could build whatever I wanted. I could build huge houses if I wanted, which I'm pretty sure didn't look good, but whatever. I could also play together with friends. We could fight against similar monsters. It's about we have to survive together. For this young person who describes his position in the world as passive and little noticed and recognized, finds possibilities for alternative world designs in the digital world. He can experience himself as actively and creatively creating. Together with his friends, he confronts the hostile monsters, maybe like the coronavirus, and experiences himself as victorious and successful in digital worlds. Another interviewer said, now I play quite often because I don't have any real friends, and playing gives me like I'm a different person. I'm always happy when I play with colleagues. It's fun. Yeah, that's it. I enjoy playing games. I feel like another person when I play. Yeah. So here it becomes apparent that the young adolescent can test alternative self-concepts via his avatar and his immersion in the digital world. But unfortunately, not all experiences described in the interviews were valued as magical. There were also some harrowing experiences. Some adolescents reported that computer gaming was increasingly seen not as relieving and positive, but as a burden and additional stress. We initially explained this by the fact that with the removal of all other limitation of gaming like schools, homework, meeting friends, doing outdoor activities, etc., gaming is hardly sufficient as the sole way to spend free time. And gaming alone could not counterbalance analog relationships and activities for a long period of time. So the substitution of all other forms of social relations via video games doesn't work out for many of our participants. However, after the summer, it has become really annoying. So it was in the end, I got cabin fever. As much as I love gaming, I can't do it so many times in a row for so long. I also played less and less CSGO because CSGO has become too much for me. I had played so much CSGO that I just all of a sudden the barrel was full. All of a sudden I couldn't stand it any longer. And just the thought of it made me sick. Each day feels the same. And another person said, that's just a pity because somehow this gaming charm is gone now. But it's still the same that 4 or 5 of us sit in the Discord channel, and in truth, we all sit there and watch YouTube or play some single player games because no one feels like playing League or whatever. That's also somehow a shame, but yes. And so one final thought.
Yeah, we know that our research was just the first insight in this topic. The adolescents opened the door to a room for us, but at the end of this room, there's still so many other doors that are closed with an even bigger room, even bigger rooms behind them. So now the room here is open to questions, input, and discussion.
These are our references.